Good morning. So good to be with you this morning. What a day yesterday. Ben, I had some dehydrated mud, and it's good now. Got took care of yesterday. It's all good and saturated now, looking great again. January is January, and Kentucky is Kentucky. Hope nobody had any major storm damage. I know that in some places pretty significant. They tell me that the Dollar General fence over here kind of is a flexible fence. It kind of goes up and down. I think it's laying depending on which direction the wind blows, so that's exciting. Sometimes architects and engineers don't understand the depth of post and concrete, so we'll see how that goes and everything else. But we are in week 2 now of an emphasis that we started for the beginning of 2020 to help us really think about what our purpose is, to help us really think about why we're here and what we're doing here and what we should be really all about. And that is who is your one. Somebody said last week that they thought I was talking about Hoosiers. Who's your one? So if you know somebody who's lost, it's from Indiana. That's okay. They need Jesus too, and that's fine. You can reach them if that's your one. That's going to be fine. But the whole idea here is for you to think about at least one person. Okay, primarily one person that you can focus on this year to reach for the gospel. Who is that person in your life? And I asked you last week to come forward and take a card from me to be able to write down and begin to pray for either who that person is. You already may have that person identified. I've had conversations with some of you this week, and it's pretty cool because when I start talking to you, sometimes you'll stop and say, that's my one. I've had opportunities already this morning to pray for some folks in their one, and that's awesome. So I hope that you're beginning to move in that direction. I hope you're beginning to think about that. And the next few weeks is to kind of help us prepare for what that looks like all year long. And I'm not going to stand up here every week and just keep on hammering. We're going to move on with some, but what that needs to be, folks, is what we're about all the time. It really needs to be. It is our mission when we go through this whole thing to look at asking who is that one person to identify in your life that you can reach with the gospel. And I was just overwhelmed last week. I teased you guys because I said everybody at 8:30 came, but I was really overwhelmed with every one of you coming to receive because, listen, that doesn't happen in every church. Living Faith is special. And those of you that are here and have been here for a long time, maybe you haven't been out of here for a while and you don't understand what goes on here, but it's really a special church. As a matter of fact, I have a friend that a couple years ago I was talking to him and about Tom Rayner. Kind of this whole thing has kind of evolved. You've heard us talk about invite your one, and inviting your one is an opportunity that we kind of do a church-wide emphasis so that if you have one person that you're praying for, to invite that person to church. And so they were trying to do that as a church-wide campaign and to have people to invite them to come to church. And when they started talking about it and started laying the groundwork for it, and they were going to kick it off and have a big invite your one emphasis and then plan the day that they were going to invite, one of his church leaders asked to meet with him in his office. And so he went. And he sat down with him. And this was a great person and one that he really enjoyed and was really good. And he said, Pastor, I don't think I can do this. And he said, well, why? He said, what's wrong with inviting somebody to come to church? He said, I'm embarrassed to invite someone to this church. And he said, well, explain. And he said, the people here are not friendly. And the people here can be mean. And I'm afraid somebody's going to come that really needs Jesus, and they're going to have a bad experience, and they're never going to go back. That's real, okay? I'm not making that up. I'm not going to tell you what church it was or who that is, but that's a real conversation between a church leader and a pastor about their church. That's frightening, folks, okay? That's frightening, but it's real. It happens out there. And there's churches this morning that there's so much strife and there's so much struggle. And there's so many things going on in the church that the people who live around the church know those things are happening there. And the last place they want to be on Sunday morning is in that church, in that fellowship. Okay? I know I've been around those things. I've seen it. Here's the only thing I'm going to say about that. Don't be that church. Okay? You're not, so don't be that. Always guard against it. Always guard against it. And as long as I'm here and as long as God gives me breath, I'll be the first one to tell you. But don't be that church. Be the church that welcomes people. Be the church that says, we want you to come. Be the church that, and here's the thing that you have to understand. This is a real thing. People without Jesus are lost. People who are without Jesus are on their way to hell. Many of them are dancing along the edge of it. Okay? Listen, when you dance along the edge of something, you smell like it. When I go to the barn and it's muddy like it is, I can come back in and I smell like the barn. Okay? When you are dabbling in sin, when you are engrossed in sin, when you are in sin up to your ears, you smell like sin. And what happens is when somebody comes into our fellowship, when somebody comes into our building, when somebody comes into our small group, it's like, well, you don't look like us. You don't smell like us. You don't talk like us. No, they're lost. And we need to love them. Okay? We need to never forget what it was like to be. Some of us have been saved so long we forgot. Don't ever let that happen. Don't ever let that happen. Don't ever let that happen to know. We need to be in a place where we are connected to the world, okay? We are in the world, but we are not of the world, okay? But you got to be able to go there. You got to be able to. Some people can't go in certain places because it just doesn't. It would be, the temptation would be so great they can't. You know, if you're an alcoholic, you probably don't need to witness to people in bars. But listen, I don't go into any restaurant and say, well, I can't sit on that side of the restaurant because I'm too good, because I'm a Christian. I don't care where you set me, okay? I don't care where you put me. I will sit and talk to anybody at any time, any place, okay? That's what I do. So we need to be in the world, okay? But not of the world. People need to look at us, okay, and say, I wonder how he can cope with his problems and not be drinking. If I'm in a restaurant having a meal and I'm there with my family, or I'm there with a friend, and somebody's there trying to drown their whole week, I want them to be able to look at me and say, I wonder how he does that. I wonder how he is okay without having to forget it all and wipe it all away. I just wonder how. I might need to talk to him about that. Okay? Well, whatever it is, we need to be in the world but not of the world. We need to feel at ease with anyone. Don't become that church. Don't become the church that becomes so focused on our own needs that we forget about the world that's around us. It's easy to do. And we're covered up with it, okay? We're covered up with it. Our whole county, our whole state is covered up with churches where the majority of the people that are in the church are more concerned with the temperature and the comfort of the chair and the color of the carpet. We don't have that problem. And whatever else it is, okay? Whatever else it is. Don't ever become that church that's called inwardly focused. It's like all these things are for me and all these things are for my comfort and my benefit. Whenever you get to that point, you're missing it. The devil starts dancing and God starts groaning in the spirit, okay? Because he sees what's happening and he sees that the emphasis comes off of the lost. That's what this is all about. Who's Your One is about keeping our emphasis in front of us at all times. Keeping our emphasis on the lost. This morning we're going to explore a story that Luke shares in his account of the gospel, and it's an occasion where some friends were trying to bring someone to Jesus. And the thing of it is it's easy to get caught up in the idea of missions without realizing what our personal role is in the mission. There are a lot of us really love sports. I love sports. If you like football, this is like the time, okay? I mean, this is like football time. And so your team may be out, mine's out, but still we find something to do. And we enjoy watching. And like this weekend is the playoffs, and then we got the championships next weekend, the Super Bowl a couple weeks after that. Tomorrow night is the college football championship game. And what happens is when we're fans, we sit in our nice, comfortable chairs, and we watch the game. And then we become critics of the game. And all of a sudden it's like, well, why did you do that? Why would you run that play? I mean, it's fourth and it's fourth and long. Why won't you punt? You need field position. I mean, you need to try to back them up. And why would you go for it? And so all of a sudden we have all these ideas and we become experts. Okay? We're not experts if we're not in the game. Okay? Now listen, I am not a football player. Played a little two-hand touch. Danny Young went to college in Campbellsville, came home as a wide receiver, got out in the backyard after he had started playing college ball. We were playing two-hand touch. He was on defense. I was on offense. I went out for a pass from Jeff Shepard. He threw a short pass. I jumped up in the air, caught the pass, and as the ball got in between my hands, it felt good. I felt my body turning upside down. And all of a sudden, my feet were pointing to the sky, and the ball was pointing to the ground. And Hound had me upside down, and he just tackled me, and bam, I hit the ground. We used to pick on him when he was a kid. I think it was payback. But anyway, I kind of woke up, and I said, Danny, we're playing two-hand touch. He said, I forgot. And that ended my football career. That was it. There was no more. A lot of folks like to sit on the sidelines, but they never step foot on the field. They become great cheerleaders, but not actual contributors. That's what happens so much in the local church. Okay? It happens in the local church as well. And our pastors, man, they're so good. They get out there and they're always here, and they come and they preach, and they're sharing Jesus, and we just we're all for that. And look at there, he got another one, and go. That's not the way it's supposed to work. Okay? My role here is to train and equip you. My role is to train and equip you and care for you and pray for you and shepherd this flock and keep you safe. Your job is to share the gospel, okay? You are ministers of the gospel. You are out there in the world and not of the world, and you are interacting with people on a daily basis, and it's your job to share the gospel with them and not be a sideline sitter, but to be in the game. Let's look at some guys here that decided to get in the game. Luke chapter 5 and verse 17 is where this story begins. One day Jesus was teaching, and Pharisees and teachers of the law were sitting there. They had come from every village of Galilee and from Judea and Jerusalem, and you're talking about a crowd. There was a crowd. And the power of the Lord was with Jesus to heal the sick. And so this is going on, and some men came carrying a paralyzed man on a mat and tried to take him into the house to lay him before Jesus. When they could not find a way to do this because of the crowd. Have you ever been in that kind of crowd? We'll talk about that in a minute. When they could not find a way to do this because of the crowd, they went up on the roof and they lowered him on his mat. They lowered him on his mat through the tiles into the middle of the crowd right in front of Jesus. And this is what, obviously, there's a man on a mat being lowered from the ceiling. He can't walk. We're looking for healing, okay? We're looking for a healing moment. And so when Jesus saw their faith, he said, friend, your sins are forgiven. Now, just a little pause here just to help you understand. In that culture, if you were sick, if you were paralyzed, if something happened to you, okay, what's wrong? What's going on inside? Okay, what's going on inside? So they always would look for this anyway. And so, friend, your sins are forgiven, but that's a problem because they have a forgive you of your sin method. It's called the temple. Okay, it's called the temple. And Jesus just says your sins are forgiven. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law begin thinking to themselves. Okay, they begin thinking. They didn't say anything. They just begin thinking to themselves, who is this guy? Who is this guy who speaks blasphemy? Who can forgive sins but God alone? They're starting to catch on. And here Jesus demonstrates something. We get glimpses of this in the gospel. Sometimes we read too fast through it and we don't catch it. He knew what they were thinking. Okay? He knew what they were thinking. All right? And he says to them, why are you thinking these things in your hearts? And then they're like Homer Simpson. Did I say that out loud or to myself? Okay? Because how does he know what I'm thinking? I got news for you folks. He knows what you're thinking too. He knows it before. Okay? you're not hiding it from him. So many times we try to avoid church. That person, you're one that you're trying to invite to get to come here. One of the resistances that they have, one of the pushbacks that they have about coming here is this represents God to them. And so this place represents God's presence. And it's like, I've got things going on in my life. I got sin going on in my life. I'm doing things that I shouldn't do. I'm being places I shouldn't be. And if I go there, he'll see me. No, he already knows. Okay? Knowing their thoughts, he asks the question, why are you thinking these things in your hearts? And then he says, which is easier? To say your sins are forgiven, or to say, get up and walk? Now, he points to something that we've talked about here not too long ago. Remember when Jesus, after the resurrection, right before he ascended, the Great Commission, what does he say right before he says, go that you therefore and teach all nations? All authority on heaven and earth has been given unto me. He gives them a glimpse right here. I want you to know something. All of you have gathered in here just for a healing party. You need to understand something. Those of you who are here just because you've got a sore back or you've got an issue or a crippled hand or whatever it is, the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. It's who I am. All right? He tells them straight up, it is who I am. And so he said to the paralyzed man, I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home. Get up, take your mat, and go home. Immediately, he stood up in front of them, took what he had been laying on, and went home praising God. Now think about that for just a moment. You got a guy here who cannot walk. You got some men going, we just got to get him to Jesus. We can't even get in the door. We're going to open up the roof, and we're going to get him down in there. And so here's a guy who cannot walk. I don't know if you've ever tried to, if you've never had the opportunity to try to move someone who can't walk or anything for themselves, especially without a stretcher. Okay, we have things now. Okay, they're called stretchers. We put people on them. But when you're trying to move somebody from a bed to a stretcher, you better have some help. Okay? The human body is just hard. When it's lifeless or when it's unable to control itself whatsoever at all, and you're just trying to get somebody picked up and moved to something, if you've ever had to do that, it is not easy. And so here they have this guy who cannot walk for himself whatsoever. And so these guys particularly know the strain that this man has gone through and know what they had to do to get him there. This same guy stood up and said, well, how about that? And walked out the door. That's amazing. And it says everybody was amazed. They all gave praise to God. They were filled with awe and said, we have seen remarkable things today. These men had a mission. Mission is what drives us. Mission is what drives us. It drives us as individuals. Now, I don't know if you're one of those people that like has your own personal mission statement, or maybe like a mission statement for your family that you put up over the fireplace, and everybody has to get together and have a cheerleading session. But if you work at a place of business or whatever, we have mission statements. Okay, we hear our mission statement at Ohio County High School every morning. Okay, maximum effort every day in every classroom. Okay, well that's what we do. We all are a part of some type of organization or something that has a mission. And you say, well, I don't know about that. Well, you're a part of this church, and we have a mission. We're going and growing and glorifying. Okay? That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. Connect, grow, serve, go. That's what we're about. Connecting to Christ, growing in faith. Okay? Serving and going. That's what we do here. When we get off course from our mission statement, all of a sudden we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. When we veer off of that, that's why we put that in front of you all the time. It's not because we think it's cute. Because when we begin to veer off of what our mission is and what we're supposed to do, we go astray. And then we fail to do what we're supposed to do. The mission statement for Instagram is to capture and share the world's moments. They share a lot of them. Okay? They share a lot of them. I just wonder how many digital pictures are out there in cyberspace floating around. Isn't that amazing? I mean, how far we've come from the 24 exposure roll. Click, develop. Oh, that one didn't turn out. Oh, and now it's like, here's 100. Nope, let's do it again. Okay? They capture the world's moments, and they do it very well. It's very simple. We just look at pictures. Jesus had a mission statement himself. We looked at it last week. You may have missed it. Luke chapter 19, verse 10. The Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. That's what he came for. He came to seek and to save the lost. Pretty good mission statement for us too. Who are you seeking? Who's your one? Who is the one that you're seeking this year? Here's something to challenge you a little bit. What really drives you? What really drives you? What gets your motor running? What do you become passionate about? What things spiritually has God put on your heart that you want to see come to fruition? And here's the thing: when I ask you that question, what really gets your motor running? What really are you passionate about? Are they kingdom dreams? Are they kingdom dreams? This challenged me a little bit because it's easy to get caught up in worldly dreams. And listen, all of this, dust. It's all vain. It's all gone. Eternity lasts forever. And that's where we should lay up our treasures. That's where we should be focused. Not that we can't have hobbies, not that we can't watch a little football every now and then, not that we can't take a little time to catch our breath. We're human, and we have to rest. But do you have kingdom dreams? Or are all of your dreams tied to this life? Think about that. These men that had this friend, they had an eager expectation. They really believed. Now you think about this. They believed that Jesus could heal him, or they wouldn't have gone to the effort. They believed that he could heal him, or they would not have gone to the effort. They believed that Jesus could heal him. And so because of that, they took a risk. They took a risk, and they brought him. There's a lot of men and women throughout the Bible that has taken risks. Joshua, he took a risk. I've studied a lot of military strategy. I've read a lot of history. I've seen a lot of stuff. But nowhere does it teach me that marching around a city and blowing horns is a good military strategy. As a matter of fact, I think it's a little risky. And Joshua said, I came across the Jordan River on dry ground. We're going to go with what he says. Elijah on Mount Carmel. All the prophets of Baal. There he was, all gathered around. I'm going to need to build a fire, but I'm not going to bring a lighter. I don't know if any of you guys cook like I do, but wet wood does not burn. Okay? It's really frustrating. Let's put water on the wood. Okay. Can you imagine? You're talking about a risk. All these people here. Me. That's Elijah. We got a sacrifice and we got wet wood. Okay, God. It's time for you to show up. It is time for you to show up and show off. Trust, faith. He took a great risk because he didn't know for sure. He believed. He had strong faith, but he took a risk. Do you have an eager expectation of somebody coming to faith? And are you willing to take a risk to make that happen? You see, sometimes exposing that, it's one thing to see somebody and go, I'm afraid they're lost. But I want to stay safe, and I really don't need to say anything to them. I really am afraid to approach them. I'm really afraid to invite them. I'm really afraid of what they're going to be. Careful. Do you have an eager expectation? Are you willing to take a risk to see them come? When these men brought their friend to Jesus, they encountered an obstacle. Because of the crowd, there was no way to Jesus. Now, I've been in a lot of crowds. I've seen a lot of folks push through. I've pushed through. I've had to elbow my way through. I've been in downtown Memphis on the 4th of July. I've been in Disney on the 4th of July. I've seen crowds, okay? And so I've been in places where you're like, oh, what a sea of humanity. How are you going to get through this? How are you going to weave through all of these people and been parts of those things? But sometimes we get to a point where it's like, I just don't know that I can overcome this crowd, and we kind of put the white flag up, okay? I did that a few years ago at Winter Jam. Now, Corley, no white flag for him. He got those kids in, okay? Me, I'm gone the other way. It's like, I don't know how I'm going to make this. There's sometimes we just look at a crowd and go, I don't know what. Now, wouldn't you have been amazed if I'd have peeled the top of the Ford Center off and lowered Michaela down on a mat, right? Huh? Here she is. Okay, but she was walking pretty good, so I thought, no. They looked at this and said, there's no way in. There's too many people. There's too much crowd. Every seat is taken. Every doorway is filled. Everybody is there. We're carrying a sick guy on a mat. You can't just kind of elbow your way through when you've got somebody that you're carrying. We assume that an open door is equal to the path of least resistance. But let me challenge you a little bit. What if the Apostle Paul had only walked through open doors? We probably wouldn't have half of our New Testament. When I was in Honduras, I introduced my friend Jose to a new English term. We had something, we were mixing concrete, and something we had broke or something took place, and I kind of rigged it and got it going. And he said, "What do you call that?" And I said, "I call that redneck ingenuity." He said, "What?" I said, "Redneck ingenuity." And so that became his term. And it's like, okay, so we just figure out a way to make it go. We figure out a way to make it happen. I grew up with my neighbors, the Shepherd Boys, and we always seemed to find a way. I wanted a deer stand built. This was back, several years ago, and way back in high school. And so I had picked out this place to build a deer stand, and this is when we used to build all wooden stands, hammer and nails. And so we went into this place, and I wanted it really tall. And it was about as tall as this ceiling, pretty close to this vent right here off the ground that I was wanting to get. And it was pretty high because I was wanting to be able to see over another obstacle. And so there was 3 trees together. And so some of you know what I'm talking about. Some of you are like, I'm clueless. But anyway, we would build steps up 2 of the trees. And so we would have a ladder that would go up. And then you have the 3rd tree that's out in front of you. And you want to make a triangle and then put wood over the top. And that's your seat. Well, we didn't have a ladder. We didn't have a tractor. We didn't have anything except hammer, nails, and wood and us. And so the first thing that we did was built the steps up the back of the tree. And so we had steps so we could get up there. And then we had our brace, our piece that needed to be out on the 3rd tree. And so I remember going up, and we had the board, and we had a nail started, and we have it up there and trying to reach out, and he couldn't reach out. And so we're standing there now, so we have an obstacle. And it's like, how are we going to get this? And so he looks around. He was like, "Hey, there's a grapevine hanging." He said, test this thing and see how strong it is. And so I'm pulling on the grapevine, and it's pretty stout. And he's like, "Okay, we're good." So he wrapped his legs around the grapevine, held onto the hammer, and he would push off the tree, and he would swing out. If you get one hit on the nail, and he would swing back and push out. And that's how we built the thing. I stood on the ground and cheered him on, and he swung on the grapevine and drove the nail. I remember growing up that way. We never, when we come up against something like that, it wouldn't be well, I guess there's no way. It was never that. It was always, what can we find? How can we overcome this? What can we do? And really risky, okay? All right? Really, no cell phones, no anything like that. If that grapevine had broke, he was coming 30 feet down, wham, and I would have been there. But that's about it. But we look for ways to overcome obstacles and would not take no for an answer. What kind of obstacles have you allowed to derail you from your mission? You see, when you think about it, this is life and death. This is eternal consequences. And how small of a thing can we allow to derail us from our mission? Oh, it's raining. It's cold. I don't feel good. You see? We let little bitty things derail us from our mission of reaching the lost. Any little thing comes along. Oh, well, we can't. That's not going to work. Oh, not today. Don't let those things happen. Overcome the obstacles that you face. What does it look like for you to dig a hole through the roof? What does that look like? Now, you probably won't have to swing from a grapevine, okay? Probably won't be that wild. But what does it look like for you to overcome the obstacle that's keeping you from bringing your one to Christ? Once they got there, these men got more than they bargained for. Never settle for the mundane when Jesus wants to do the miraculous. You see, the people around there thought his need was external, but when Jesus did in this passage is true for everybody. He shows us that the greatest need is an internal posture of a heart that needs to be changed. And so Jesus just went right through the external need and addressed the deeper need. Listen, just because somebody gets sick doesn't mean that God has punished them. Okay? We live in a fallen world. We live in a sinful world. People get sick. Bad things happen to good people. That's just true. But God works through those things. He creates opportunity. He creates opportunities for us to witness. He creates opportunities for us to go. When somebody loses something, if you have storm damage, a house fire, whatever it is, when you see those things happen, it's an opportunity for you to be Jesus to them. So take those opportunities. Don't look at it and go, well, they must be doing something wrong for God to punish them. That's not what he's doing. Okay? That's not what he's doing. But you look at something and say, well, this has happened, and how can God use this to be a beacon of hope? Jesus shows us that the greatest need is the internal posture of a heart that needs to be changed. And when Jesus addressed that deeper need, the people were amazed. The Son of Man has authority to forgive sin, and he has the authority to forgive yours today. He has the authority to forgive the sins of your one. The person that you are trying to reach, he has the authority to forgive their sin. They may be trapped, caught, confused, whatever it is, but he has the authority to forgive that sin. You know why he has that authority? Not just the fact that God gave it to him, but he paid the price for it. He died for it. He paid the price for it. He died for it, because when he said that all authority on heaven and earth has been given unto me, it was after the resurrection. It was after the crucifixion. He had paid the price, and he had overcome death and was standing ready to ascend to the Father. Your sins are forgiven. Let me ask you a question. How did other people play a role in your trusting Jesus? If you've accepted Christ as your Savior, then you have a story. You have a place that you did that. And somebody had a hand in that. What was that like? When I grew up, New Harmony Baptist Church was my home church. Very long, complicated process I wouldn't be able to explain, but I can just tell you that our church only had service 3 Sundays a month. Three Sundays a month, and we didn't have a Sunday school. So this one-room church, when in the 1970s decided we're going to have a vacation Bible school. I'm sure at some point in time, that group of people who were coming to that church got together and said, okay, well, we don't have any air conditioning, and we're going to do it in July. We don't have a kitchen, but we can bring snacks. You know, that group of people could have got together and said, you know, when I get home from work, I'm tired. I just like to sit and, watch Wheel of Fortune and fall asleep. They could have said, I just don't have time for this. But instead they said, yeah, let's do this. Why? Because we don't think Greg has ever made a profession of faith. He's not been baptized. And maybe it was not just me, but there were other kids there too. And so they played a role in my salvation, because it was at that vacation Bible school that I got saved. So because somebody said, we're going to overcome this. We don't have everything that other churches have. We don't have a bathroom, but we've got trees. And so we're just going to do this, okay? And some of y'all are thinking, where did he grow up? Okay? We went back there to pastor in 1999 when the church burned down, and all we had at that time was an outhouse. And I remember Taylor, when she was 4 years old, looked at Sandy and she said, Mama, when I grow up, I want an outhouse of my very own. Who played a role in your trusting Jesus? Who did that? Who did that for you? You need to think about that, because that's your story. In what ways has Jesus transformed your life? Where were you when you realized you were lost? Where were you? For some of you, that's a remarkable story. I mean, it really is. It's an amazing story. I could just sit down and listen to that story all day long. Some of you were like me. You were 9 or 10 years old, and you were taken to church your whole life, and then other opportunities were presented to you, and then you just said, okay, I need to kind of figure this out. How did it happen for you? How did he transform your life? What were you like before, and what are you like now? And why would you not want that same type of transformation in other people? Why would you not want that life for them? Why? I'm going to close this morning with a little story about fishermen. I thought it was kind of cute. I didn't write it, but it's pretty cool. Now, it came to pass that a group existed who called themselves fishermen. And lo, there were many fish in the waters all around. In fact, the whole area was surrounded by streams and lakes filled with fish. And the fish were hungry. And David Coleman's getting excited. Week after week, month after month, and year after year, these who called themselves fishermen met in meetings and talked about their call to fish, the abundance of fish, and how they might go about fishing. Year after year, they carefully defined what fishing means, defended fishing as an occupation, and declared that fishing is always to be a primary task of fishermen. Continually, they searched for new and better methods of fishing and for new and better definitions of fishing. They created witty slogans and displayed them on big, beautiful banners. These fishermen built large, beautiful buildings called fishing headquarters. And the plea was that everyone should be a fisherman and every fisherman should fish. One thing they didn't do, however, they didn't fish. In addition to meeting regularly, they organized a board to send out fishermen to other places where there were many fish. The board hired staffs and appointed committees and held many meetings to define fishing, to defend fishing, and to decide what new streams should be thought about. But the staff and committee members did not fish. Large, elaborate, expensive training centers were built, whose original and primary purpose were to teach fishermen how to fish. Over the years, courses were offered on the needs of fish, the nature of fish, where to find fish, the psychological reactions of fish, and how to approach and feed fish. Those who taught had doctorates in fishology. But the teachers did not fish, they only taught fishing. Year, after tedious training, many graduated and were given fishing license. They were sent to do full-time fishing, some to distant waters, which were filled with fish. Many who felt the call to be fishermen responded. They were commissioned and sent to fish. But like the fishermen back home, they never fished. They engaged in all kinds of other occupations. Some felt their job was to relate to the fish in a good way, so the fish would know the difference between good and bad fishermen. Others felt that simply letting the fish know they were nice, land-loving neighbors, and how loving and kind they were was enough. Now, it's true that many of the fishermen sacrificed, put up with all kinds of difficulties. Some lived near the water and bore the smell of dead fish every day. They received the ridicule of some who made fun of their fishermen's clubs and the fact that they claimed to be fishermen, yet they never fished. Imagine how hurt some were when one day a person suggested that those who don't fish were really not fishermen, no matter how much they claimed to be. Yet it did not. It did sound correct. Is a person a fisherman if year after year he never fishes? Or maybe more plainly stated, is one really following if he isn't fishing? The purpose of this whole time that we have over these next weeks is to start casting our nets. To start casting our nets. Who is that one? Who is that one that you are going to go after? Who is that one? Let me pray. Father, last week, many came.